Welcome, faraway friends, curiosity seekers, and connoisseurs of fantasy throughout the realms. I have with me the great pleasure of Steve Gernes, Darkport's, many things, but among them, among many caps that this man wears, is the music director for Darkport. So, welcome, Steve, and thank you very much for finding the time.
Thank you for having me here, Angel. This is going to be a ton of fun.
Yeah, no, it will be. It will be.
Yeah.
Or should perhaps I should refer to you as Stevis the Bard, because after all, reports are persistent rumors have circulated that Stevis the Bard, despite being one of Jason Tenderheart's companions 2 centuries ago, is now back in the Riverlands. Clearly impossible.
And still kicking around.
And absolutely still kicking around. Never got rid of him. Never got rid of him. So I wanted to start with just a very simple, but I think vital question, and we'll get into some juicy stuff here. Who is Steve Gernes?
Well, I am a music maker who lives in Minnesota in the Twin Cities. I grew up here. I went to undergrad here. I moved to LA for about 5 years to go to school and work. And, made a lot of great friends out there, learned a ton as an assistant and then on my own, and missed the Midwest, missed home and family, and, ended up moving back. And, you can do everything. Everybody's everywhere. You can do things remotely. I still work with friends from out there, but yeah. I live here. I have a house with my wife. We have a lovely doggo and bunny, and I just do freelance. I do freelance composing work and music director for Darkeport.
Music director for Darkeport, indeed.
Mm-hmm.
Fair warning or full transparency, I adore this man, so these questions are not these are going to be the softest of softball questions, although I am going to try to get at least some of the process. So I can describe our first meeting, but I'm also going to ask you from your perspective. So I believe, was it February 2nd of last year of 2023 that we had our first meeting, or maybe that was the first email?
I think so. Yeah. I think
it was like early.
Corey reached out to me.
Yeah, our CEO.
Maybe in late January. On LinkedIn of all things.
On LinkedIn of all things, I know.
Yeah.
Which, I now understand does not comprise a major portion of your reality, but this was so. I mean, we just passed our first anniversary.
We did, yeah.
I was still so raw in this process, and anyone who has watched the stream will know that this is, I'm not done being raw. But I was kind of a basket case, and so this man who did not know me from Adam had such incredible grace and patience and really compassion for someone who could barely even speak, and I was, and Corey was billing me as this like expert communicator, and I was sitting there just choking on my own words, because the whole I had not even really fully made peace with the fact that I was not going to tell the story that I thought I was going to tell, So one day campaign 2 will happen, and I will tell that story that I initially meant to, but man, this one it came upon me, and it took hold, and that was kind of that. So I'm curious, and I've never asked you this, and for our viewers, I've only given Steve just the very vaguest outline of the interview. I've given him very few specific questions, and none of my favorite ones ahead of time. So like this one, what was that meeting like for you, who had never met any of us before?
Well, I didn't really know, because when Corey messaged me on LinkedIn, he was like, hey, we're looking for, usually you only send really brief messages on that. Like, we're looking for some fantasy type music for some actual play kind of thing. And I think we messaged just a teensy bit after that, but I really didn't know uh, what you all were going for or what the process would be like. And I mean, immediately meeting all of you guys, you, Justin, Justinian, uh,
Justinian.
and
Yes.
Corey, you're all just like such warm, likable, like immediately at easy to talk to. I'm sure we were joking about like Dune and Game of Thrones pretty quickly.
Rapidly.
Yeah,
And
like
specifically pugs. Yeah.
and
Pugs.
specifically pugs and pugs in Dune.
And pugs in Dune. Yeah.
To do a whole interview about that.
Yes, we should. We absolutely
But
should.
yeah, I was just like, it sounded like a dream project from the get-go because you were all so cool, so
Really?
open. You were also open to like so curious about music and so excited to find out what the sound of Darkport would be. And a lot of the times you go into situations and things are already pretty set, or people are like you have a very fixed vision, which works fine too. But I love having the collaborative process where we find the sound for, well, each and every theme, track, location together. It's not like me just giving you a piece of music and they're like, here you go, like there it is. We have a long back and forth, we talk about it, and we'll get into that process more. But like we really tried, I think we started pretty quick. I mean, we worked on that main theme for a pretty long time. Main themes are really hard.
We had to get it right.
Yeah, I had to get it right. And we worked on that one. I mean, I'm sure I have at least 40 plus versions of that built up.
Wow. Okay.
And, and that's like an amazing part of the process. But yeah, upon meeting you all for the first time and hearing about what you wanted to go about do and how ambitious and exciting it was, and like the type of world that Darkport is, and like give the opportunity to come up with a musical language for this amazing, rich universe, I'm like, heck yeah, this would be amazing. And like
I didn't. I didn't know your initial, and you're very kind. You're a very kind human, as I've come to know. So when you say curious about the musical process, I would say clueless about the musical process.
No, you in particular are very open to ideas and learning. And I mean, I think it's like it can be really intimidating to talk about something as abstract as music, particularly when you're not used to talking about what you like and like what you want to hear, or what you don't like in a particular track, or getting over like telling somebody who created something that this isn't working perfectly and we should change it up, which is all part of the process. And you were really like, you were very open and to advice and just talking about music and just brainstorming. Like, I think we had a pretty long period of just brainstorming of what the sound of Darkport could be and what we would both like it to be.
For sure. And part of that early portion, that opening era, was all about not just figuring out the individual songs, but probably more importantly, figuring out what the language, the vocabulary of Darkport was going to be from a musical perspective. No?
Yes. Yeah. And that's like top to bottom a huge topic, right? Just from like arrangement, instrumentation, what kind of thematic music do you want to write? How epic do you want it to get, and
oh yeah,
like whether you like it or not, what slot of like what genre of fantasy music will it most fit into? And we always wanted it to be darker, but not grimdark, not bleak, not hopeless. There's got to be hope. There's got to be perseverance. There's got to be beauty in it, but it is dark.
It is.
For sure, which I love. I love making dark music. Just say to myself.
So man, that's like a springboard for like five different questions there. I'm going to try to contain myself here. We will pretty much get to all of them, though. I think, not surprisingly, you and I have been powerfully simpatico through this whole experience. I'll say, I've said this in comments before, but I may as well say it here, kind of for all time. Your ability to take what a person gives you So, for example, with the theme, we started with the twin themes of sacrifice and the indomitability of the human spirit.
Yeah.
And every time, literally every single person that I have ever spoken with who has listened to that theme, they wouldn't necessarily put it in those terms, but there is something that really stirs them on a deep level when they're listening to that and encountering it for the first time. I
Yeah.
mean, it's like, and I don't say this lightly, it's really that theme song, because of your, frankly, genius, has been met with like universal acclaim, you know? Um, and there are a few other songs on there that are like that for me. Sui Juris is one of them. Lady Vale's theme song is one of them that I personally can listen to again and again. But I'm unbiased on that because I know the character's backstory and all of that. But you capture those emotions perfectly. But just the fact that you can take what a layperson tells you, something as vague as that, and yes, I listened to it and I really tried to say, okay, at this mark, I'm hearing this and I'm feeling this emotion and like that. But man, how did you hone that? Like, is that, I mean, that can't just be something that you were born with, right? And how did you grind that out to the proficiency and with the empathy that you approach that with, Steve?
Whoa, those are really good questions. I have to dig
See,
back.
I told you I didn't play you the best one.
Yeah. Well, as far as how I hone that, well, I'm still honing that because you never stop learning, never stop improving, right?
Yes, absolutely.
And
yes.
I have an infinitude to learn more about writing, making music, but I had kind of, I don't know. I've thought about this a lot myself, how I've gotten to where I've gotten to make the kind of music that I make. So I had kind of a non-traditional, as far as it goes, like composing background. So
right.
I did like production stuff, hanging out in a studio with friends in high school and making beats, probably doing that, playing guitar, doing those things. And that's like when I got into techie, the more production side, and then eventually saved money and bought my own limited gear, but learned a ton on it. And then like undergrad, I mean, I went to a liberal arts school for undergrad, and I always took music and did music classes, but I was never like from the get-go, this is going to be my path. We're going straight to composition. We're going straight to like music for visual media kind of thing. I was almost going to be, I was almost going to be a religion philosophy major, and then like, I don't know, it was too much. It was too much writing papers and too much speech giving, and I'm not good at giving speeches. And like, I had a really fantastic private composition professor at Hamline University where I went, who, private lessons, and his name's Ed Marcus, and he lives in, well, they live in Portugal now. They moved. But
oh, wow, okay.
Just the way he like, because I started and I had not ever written for any live instruments before. Like, it was a whole new notation, doing all this stuff. That was all. Sure, I played stuff and played guitar and piano and all these things, but as far as like writing for other people for instruments that I didn't play, that was a whole new, like, terrifying thing, because you're like, I have no idea what I'm doing. How am I supposed to know what I'm doing? How am I supposed to know what to write for all these instruments? And he was such like a great, kind, and like patient teacher, and he knew like how to like get past that frustration and open these things up where it's more like you get to the curiosity and the excitement. And that was just writing for solo instruments, and I didn't start writing for orchestra and orchestral instruments until later in undergrad. And then when I was like, oh, I want to apply to USC, the school I went to, for film music, you have to submit 3 tracks to 3 different clips that are, they don't have to be orchestral in nature, but I did orchestral in nature, and I didn't get in the first time. But so I spent like a year after that getting better at sample libraries, writing arrangements, orchestral music, theme writing, all that, getting better at the tech. And I did get in the second time, and moved out there. And it's funny being in a program like that, because I felt like you get huge imposter syndrome. So there's like 20 people in a class, 5 for a year. So it's like it's very competitive to get in. I'm still like, wow, I can't believe I got it.
Good old imposter syndrome.
Yeah, and you're like,
Yep,
wow, these
classic.
people around me went to like
It's a
they like
classic.
yeah, they've had like wow, all this classical training and like they went to school just for this and they've written for orchestra all this time and they're like feel like they're so far beyond where I am or where I could get to and the imposter syndrome sticks around for and you still get it every once in a while, but like learning how to be like, okay, of course there's right and wrong ways to do things. Like you can't, if you want to write for live players, not write out of that instrument's range, like that kind of fundamental thing. But as far as how you should write for different instrument families, how you should mix stuff, how you should do your arrangements, it's like, breaking past the conventional wisdom of what you should be doing and this is how it's done and finding your own way was a big I'm super stubborn and competitive with all those things. So, if somebody's like, this is the only way to do it, I'm going to lean pretty hard into the other way. Even if it's somebody who I like respect and admire, that's just how my brain works. And so like, I don't know. I like to follow the random pathways for music. I like to study for tech. I have lots of stuff. Tech I like to use, instruments I like to play.
I mean, you're like constantly learning, even in the time
that
I've known you. You've like, oh, okay, so here's this sound that I want to bring in for this song. So let me play around with this different instrument and really get a feel for it and see how I would incorporate it in and stuff like that. I mean, your learning curve for anything musical is kind of insane, honestly.
Oh, thanks. I mean, that's that's a huge part of the fun, right? Like always be challenging yourself, always try to learn new things. It's like why I've stopped using really giant templates for stuff because giant fixed templates that you get really used to push you in the same directions. They're great for convenience, but they do push you in the same comfortable pathways over and over again, which is great for expediency, and when you need expediency, great, it's there. But for exploration and like pushing yourself beyond your comfort zone, I do think that's a really big thing. It's like being creative is a big part of being willing to be in a really uncomfortable, vulnerable state for as long as you can.
I don't know anything about that.
As you would know exactly what I'm talking about. And it's like, I've talked with my composer friends about this, between projects, and it's like sometimes it sounds funny from an outside perspective, really hype yourself up to get back into the mindset because like there is stress and there is discomfort in that creative mindset. And as and as far as I think, like if I'm very comfortable doing something and it's easy, it doesn't feel like I'm doing the right thing.
That's actually not what I thought you were going to say. That's a really interesting way to describe that.
Well, there's definitely like flow state where things seem to flow really easily. But like I found if I kind of focus on that feeling and sensation a little more, it's like that flow state is just kind of an openness to being uncomfortable and trying stuff out, which can be a tough place to get to sometimes. Sometimes you're not going to get there and you just got to grind through it, which is a big thing I learned, the difference between doing music just for fun and when you're stuck when you're doing music for fun, you could be like, I just don't feel like it. I'll just do something else. I'll just start another track. But when you're like, oh, I have to get this done, I have to find a way to push through, like when I feel like I'm stuck in the mud, the non-inspirational moments to get back to those things. It's a skill I'm still working on, but I think I've gotten better at it.
I would say so.
That was a very long-winded way of talking about how I gotten to where I am with my musical voice.
Well, I mean, but you touched on half a dozen different things. I can already tell you that down the road, I would like to do a part 2 to this interview where I bring in Tobias, our assistant producer, because Toby's, he has a music degree. He's been a musician before. He's also taught music before. He's like, super reflective and insightful and all of those things. And I'd love to go down some of those, not even necessarily rabbit holes, but honestly, legitimate paved pathways and really get into some of the, like, one thing that you said there just was fascinating to me about how do you write music for an instrument that you yourself do not play. I mean, that's a really interesting question to me. I'm thinking that I'm thinking of that in terms of a martial artist. You know, my mentor told me a long time ago, never pick up a weapon you don't know how to defend against. And that kind of, less potentially sinister implications there about writing for an instrument you don't know, but actually kind of essentially the same, a very similar mentality there.
Yeah, I definitely say
too.
so.
So
and yes, I'd love to do that with Toby. Toby's an amazing guy.
I wish y'all. I mean, obviously, I just wish we could see you every day, but like I wish that Toby in particular, Justin as well. Although I know you and Justin have done some like serious collaboration on the production front that a lot of audience members don't necessarily see, but they'll hear it and they'll see some of the fruits of that. But Toby's one of those people that I wish you would be able to have a chance to, I don't know, just have a meeting of those minds. I know, bias, and he's dear to me. Introduced him to his wife, who's also a dear friend of mine, officiated his wedding, etc.
Yeah.
And I feel like it's funny, Steve, because there's this whole other discussion about like how well can you get to know somebody over distance and these collaborations, because we still there was a whole host of things that was going on with your life, and and now the tempo's really picked up. So trying to get out to you or have you come out here was not going to happen in 23.
The tempo has picked up.
No, it
for everybody, that's for sure.
Yeah, I mean, you're just working on all kinds of stuff. I know.
Well, we could have a whole interview with Justin talking about. I mean, and Justin figuring out all the stuff he's figured out, and making it work so well, and building a system that works so well is incredible.
It kind of is,
just from the sound side. Even without all the video and all the stuff he runs, like, wow, man, having figured all that out, how to use the music live, how to make the room sound good, how to get the mic sounding good, how to get the auto mixing going on the mics so it stays clean, how to have music in the room. It's
sure.
Amazing.
Yeah, for sure. And that's not even, and that wasn't even his training.
Yeah.
That was just him. Like that was just him working through with the skills that he did have as a software developer.
Talk about ability to learn, right? Yeah.
No, seriously. Well, I mean, Justin's always had that, and he's like maybe the only person in real life I've ever known that if we were playing Vampire the Masquerade, I would give like the fast learner merit too. He's always, I mean, we've known each other basically since we were kids. Like he's always picked the things crazy fast.
Yeah.
So I guess, I mean, you're kind of knocking some of these questions off. I wanted to ask though, how do you feel like, so to go back to the theme song, Sacrifice, Indomitability, the Human Spirit, how are we doing? How are we doing? How are we doing at having that being the connective tissue of the campaign, of the musical language, and kind of informing all of these other themes? Because I can hear it,
Yeah.
I can hear it even if I'm not literally hearing it. And that I'm champing at the bit to hear the intimate version of that, because that's going to be a specific character's theme song.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't realize that until you'd already started playing with some of that. But anyway, how so I guess there's that tighter question, and then a closely related question but slightly broader is how are we doing on developing a language for Darkeport to describe it?
Well, I think it's amazing how it's evolved and progressed. I mean, that first main theme, the main track, has informed everything. And I know, like, when you get down to character themes and all that, they can get pretty different, which of course was our intention, right? To make sure,
right.
To make sure everybody, we'll talk about the character ones, but as far as that is a tough one to verbalize.
Glad to put you through your paces.
As far as like an emotional language for writing the music, and the places we like to go emotionally and the places we don't like to go, I think we've really refined it. Even though that is a funny thing to put your finger on and to cast into words, but the hope, resilience, the sadness, the beauty in things, the grimness of things, and the language, like I can hear it in my head if I'm thinking, oh, if you were saying we want something for this, I can have a pretty fair idea in my head how I would like it to start. I think part of the fun is like I like discovering it along the way with ideas, coming up with ideas as I go, and then bouncing ideas and getting ideas back from you, and then we get to do places where I wouldn't have gotten on my own, and that's part of what's so great.
I love that.
Yeah.
I love that. Just to add to that real quick, I've said this before, but it definitely bears repeating here. It has been such a thing to take this world that you're creating, because this world, it has a little bit of carryover from like our long running homebrew, but it really is its own creature, because I designed the world of Terra to be recognizable, quite recognizable, and it's really pretty grounded. It's even more grounded than the homebrew one. Magic is rare. Magical creatures don't really need to exist, because if you go into our own Paleolithic eras, and various deep time, you can find all kinds of wacky, crazy stuff. And I'm like, it just survived, that sort of thing.
We've had many talks about
many talk about sea aquatic,
particularly aquatic creatures.
Yeah, for sure.
River monsters. Yep.
All kinds of river monsters. But oh boy, I lost. See, ADHD strikes again.
Yeah, sorry, I got you good there.
No, you're so good at that too. One of your many talents.
You're talking about it feeling grounded and developed. Yeah,
it was. Oh, that'll come.
I got you real good. Yeah.
I know you got me. That'll come back to me. But we were, I mean, we're developing this language. I think we have done a good job. Well, an earlier kind of prong that I wanted to throw out was it's such a moving target because it's like inherently subjective, right? Because part of Darkeport is one of the hallmarks, I guess it's funny because I didn't really hone in on this until I was watching myself all the time, which was kind of its own experience, kind of excruciating experience, is to see how much I emphasize the subjective experience of the characters. And the fact that you have been able to get inside of them and like pull this out is just remarkable to me.
That has been so much fun.
And you're not even playing. And Steve, that's without you even playing at the table. It'd be a feat under any circumstances, but you really managed to the fact that you've done all of this from distance is, I don't know, that it's kind of that part kind of blows me away.
Well, working with you on stuff and then all the character themes individually and working with the actual players has been... What order did we go in? Okay, we did Corey, we did Merrick. We did Merrick, Titus. Katrin.
Katrin was next. Yeah. Katrin was a lot of fun, and everybody everybody was jealous of Katrin's.
The most magical.
It had the first It had the first note. It had the first notes of magic, and it got to be something that was quite different.
And then I think was it Marcus before Wesa? I think it.
Ooh.
That one I can't remember. I think it might have been.
Yes, I think Marcus, and then Wesa, and then Alicia for the fellowship members.
And then Alicia, came in at the end. And then we revisited Merrick because Corey was feeling gypped because his was a little short.
His was short, yeah. No, he'll say, no, that's not it. But no, I did to that point, I did notice the trend that they tend to
get longer and longer.
They just kind of got longer. You could tell later because they're longer.
Yeah. I just got more and more into it and more into the musical language of it, and was like, oh yeah, these ideas need to be this long. Yeah.
No, it was also like another thing where I look at it and the song, like, there's so much packed into it it feels like it's like, I'll take the volume 1 that's out, right?
Mhm.
The volume 1 of Darkeport that's out, which, has more likes by several orders of magnitude than all the rest of Darkeport combined. People really like your music. Uh, and uh, and I'm like, I put it on. I'm like, how can this entire thing only be half an hour? This
I
entire thing
know,
is like
right?
barely over 30 minutes. And
Yeah.
yet all of these different emotions and histories and journeys are packed into this thing. And yet it's like over so quickly.
Well, and it's
That
funny, we have like these two worlds of Darkport music, right? We have like uh set piece
on stream.
thematic stuff, and then we have stuff that
Oh
plays
yeah.
on stream, which is very different, like very different in function and composition, to be unobtrusive while you're all playing.
Since this is an actual play and you're our music director, do you want to talk just a little bit about the challenges that you had in terms of getting the music characteristics, the musical characteristics correctly, sitting under the dialogue and that sort of thing?
Yeah, so it's a huge difference for writing music for music's thematic music's sake. Big peaks and
Right.
valleys, dramatic, soft, loud, all kinds of stuff. And while like that stuff is really great for that function behind dialogue and during actual play, when dialogue is king, dialogue is the most important thing. Like you have
Yeah.
that has to be tops.
Yeah.
And you also don't want, if you have really dynamic music with big dynamic range and hefty arrangements, like when it gets soft, it's going to feel like it's gone. When it gets loud, it's going to be obtrusive. Like, why is there really this really dramatic moment coming just out of the blue when there's nothing of particular importance happening on stream? And part of the trick of that, and I work with, like, particularly with Justin. So Justin was really instrumental in figuring out how that stuff would work and what would work well. Because I'm not actually in the room hearing it, and he was like, his and your advice too, like hugely valuable to figure out what's the level of energy and like mood
Mm.
you want to set, and then like picking groups of moods that can work under lots of different circumstances. And like the intimate ambient one, which plays the most, which is mostly a lot of this hammer dulcimer going on, is very low-key, sparse, atmospheric, and that kind of thing works great under most situations.
You can never have enough. You can never have enough.
Yeah, and so like we ended up breaking it. So there's that. There's the first batch I did, which is a bit bigger, has bigger dynamic range, and actually I did flatten them a little bit. I haven't gotten it into the Wise session yet. But we have that. We have tension, and then we have combat, and
Two different things there. Two
yeah,
different things.
and
That's really helpful.
we did build this all into sorry, dog outside the door. Okay, she's gonna go get dinner. Yeah, we did build that all into a Wise session because I really wanted, like, it's still ambitious in retrospect. Like, I'm very grateful to Justin for being so open to doing something like that. But using a video game implementation software, audio implementation software, to make the music more dynamic than a static playlist that just shuffles, was like something I really, really wanted to do to make the music feel more immersive while you're all playing. Because I think there's a dramatic difference between a loop playlist in like iTunes and something that has randomization, variations,
Absolutely.
sync points, like overlap. Like, it should feel fresh as long as it runs, even for hours, which is a big part of the fun.
Do you want to describe the dynamic music? I think it's kind of amazing, the setup that you have going on.
Yeah, so what we got set up with Justin has a Wise session open on his laptop, and we haven't gotten quite cute enough with it yet. We'll get there for Stream Deck buttons. And maybe getting you Stream Deck buttons.
Don't give me that. Don't give me that kind of power.
I think it's going to happen. And so he's got that open, and that runs like a stereo feed, I think into the mixer, so he has control over all that. And we have different triggers set up that he can press with a soon hopefully buttons but a mouse click. So general ambience, intimate ambience, which is lower, tension, combat, and then we have various special ones to play, like a Titus and Lucretia or Utini, that kind of thing.
We're getting
Germentum, yeah, any specific kind of place. And while not all of them are built to work perfectly under dialogue, like they're all built to transition in and out of each other seamlessly, so it feels like a cohesive piece of music. Particularly the intimate ambient stuff, the normal stuff, the tension and the combat should be able to flow. So Justin just picks as he goes when he wants to change the music, which is I think part of his artistry there. He's got so much to keep track of. I don't know how he does all of that at the same time.
I'm not kidding when I say, an outfit like Critical Role has 17 people doing his job. It's insane.
Yeah, Justinian. Yeah. But yeah, that's what we built that up because we were like, oh man, to have music in the room for you all to enhance the experience and the immersion. You're like, that would be so cool, and we puzzled over that for a long time. Justin and I came up with a lot of ideas, and Justin got there with the last one that works, and it's having the speakers in the room and how we set it up and the levels he set it up with and how he set up the microphones auto gating and mixing, so it doesn't bleed through everything. It's like, I still don't quite know how you did it, but it's awesome.
That was some work.
Yeah.
Well, eventually, doggone it, we're going to get you in that frickin' studio, and then you'll really be able to cook. You'll be able to see all the different things.
Yeah, you'll get me away from Winterfell down to King's Landing.
Get you down to King's Landing. Probably. I'll make sure you get here between the months of like December and February, like right now. Otherwise, I'm afraid that you'd melt and your lovely wife would never forgive us. So.
I'm not sure I'm ready for that summer Austin heat. Yeah.
No. Are you kidding, Steve? I'm not sure I'm ready for that summer Austin heat.
Sorry, I brought it up. I shouldn't have brought it up.
we don't talk about it. No. It's like February's not even done, and it hit the 80s today, and I'm like, oh man, okay, this is going to be
what?
Because it enhances my already strong vampiric tendencies. What? I don't want to go out when it's literally 115 degrees outside and actually more. You can be walking out and you see the heat mirages rising up from the somewhat softened asphalt.
You're like, I'm immediately drenched.
Yeah, I'm like, this is miserable. This is miserable. I'm good up until about 100, even I don't know, 102, like that. But man, when it just cranks up like that, it's intense. It's funny because I don't know, that I won't go off on this, but there's a whole piece in my head about how the weather impacts the characters, and one of these days I would love to get Justin and I were talking about in our interview how we haven't really done much with the lighting yet, because we actually have he built in quite a bit of capability that we haven't gotten to the point of utilizing yet, and having It's Raining song and it's and the light effects for it and all of that would be really cool.
That would be real. We could get there. We could definitely get there.
No, that would be.
I know there's some moments you're waiting for those lights.
No, there are. Oh, really? Yes. There's one I can't even now. We can't divulge. Gotta.
Yeah.
I have to. Hey, man. I have to have my secrets. My secret somehow. I'm notorious for my 7-year-long plot lines, and for sitting on secrets for a decade before I'll finally tell the players, because I just want to make sure that the payoff's there for me, for them. The whole. Thing.
Yeah.
So how would you? I mean, you've kind of already talked about it, but what would you say are the beyond what the features you've already highlighted? What are some of the hallmarks of the musical language that we've created, or how you've applied it. And I'll give you an example. So with the Utini soundtrack, the Ravening, or track, I should say, the Ravening, you could have gone a very easy, and you were talking about templates before. There is a very easy route to go if you're talking about, okay, tribal raiders, and there's a well-worn groove that you could have just followed right in, and you didn't, and yet that's another song. I think Justin's first comment when he heard it was like, now I want to go raid something. and like whenever I was playing it during the Battle of the Broken Tower, the trilogy that went on, where it was like, this is the battle that never ends, and we were doing it. I think there was one time Donnie, I think the mic did pick him up. We're just like, oh fuck, and and Justin started playing it when the Utini champions were coming out, and and it was something like that. It was a really funny moment, and I'm trying to stay composed and in the moment, and just like very representative of the world and the mood and all of that. But that kind of cracked me up inside. So why, when you're doing these things and you're making this language, why add the extra layer of difficulty to yourself? And how are you thinking about that? And like, how else do you describe it?
Well, to talk about the Utini track specifically, I got
Sure.
a really good reference track from you.
Dun 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 dun. You got the Klingons.
Yeah, and I listened to that for days and days. Because I love me
sure
some
Katie
Goldfest.
just loved it. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And as far as, well, okay, because there's a couple questions in there. So as far as kind of like stylistic overarching things that seem to have come together as the Darkeport sound, we knew, like, I'll get to the why I choose the difficult.
I'm absolutely.
But like,
however you want to.
Yeah, because when we were conceptualizing and talking about what it might sound like in really early days, which is like, it's a really exciting and fun, because you're like, we could try things, and you could see what sticks, what doesn't stick, could talk about things we don't like. And like from the get-go, I was like, okay, I don't think you all want your standard like high fantasy, medieval style soundtrack.
Right.
Yeah, which is like your lutes, your lutes, your
Yeah.
recorders, your very standard like magical, adventurous, high fantasy style music, which is just fine in its place. But it was like, that is not to me what Darkeport felt like at all. But on the other end, Darkeport did not feel like your Warhammer 40k grimdark, everything's bad, this is just the least bad thing.
Right.
Like, it's all awful, just don't focus on it for too long. Like, there's hope there.
We're playing in the almost literal city on the hill, trying to survive. Trying to survive. Yeah.
And so like that's how we started it. In my head, I was like, okay, I as far as getting into more specifics of writing this type of fantasy music, it was like, I wanted to stay away from your big epic orchestra sound, which is kind of a trailerized kind of thing, huge like 100-piece string sections, giant brass sections, giant percussion. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I hear Justin's voice in my head now.
Yeah, no, he does that. He does that better.
That was good though.
Yeah.
That kind of thing. And like, we were pretty much on the same page that was the kind of thing, like, not just huge strings, huge brass, huge choir, epic all the time. That's also not how this felt. And that was the kind of thing, it's like most all of the strings is saved for a few times are solo string writing. So it's like quartet style writing, quintet, quartet, which is more intimate. If given the chance, I like to save the really big, huge string sections, brass, choir. We've really saved on the choir, which I think is fun.
We'll get there.
For really purposeful moments, like It's like an improviser told me, who's comedic improviser is like, you gotta save your swears and earn your swears. So it's when you swear, it's funny and impactful. And if it's just normalizing, you do it all the time, it loses all its impact. So I think we knew we wanted to start with something more intimate, less on the epic side of things,
That's
more
good
intimate.
advice. Sorry,
Yeah.
that's good advice for GMs too, by the way. What you just
Yeah.
said.
Save your swears.
It's save your whatever that means.
Yeah. Whatever that means.
Save it. Don't just throw it around all the time. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And like, we wanted to start from this more kind of intimate, moody place. And I remember early on that we wanted to try to fit piano into the palette, our fantasy kind of palette. And it got in there on the original one, and it has been in lots of it. It's become a staple of the sound. And I mean, of course, the main theme gets pretty big and bombastic and about as epic as we get so far in Darkeport Music Land. But it really did inform all the other things. And part of the fun for different locations or different characters is being like, okay, where are we at with our musical language, and how can we branch this out and explore new sounds and like new palettes that still feel like part of Darkport, but feel different enough to be unique in this universe. And like, I feel like we did, I mean, all of us together, you, the whole troupe, a pretty good job of making each character theme, stand pretty well apart from each other. They're all pretty unique.
Yeah, no, they don't. Yeah.
And I'd like to think they all still feel Darkporty. But like we don't use a lot of choir, and when we do, it's very purposeful. Like Merrick's theme is the most rustic, like woodlandsy theme. It has the most like wood flutes, woodwinds, that kind of thing. It has that very intimate vibe to it. Titus's is the most martial. And like Katrin's is the most magical. I would say Wesa's is maybe the most mysterious.
I would agree.
Yeah, Marcus is like the most salt of the earth of the whole bunch.
I mean, they're their theme songs.
Yeah, and Nalishli was like that was to do that as a last one, and like that character in particular was a really fun puzzle and challenge, just based on the nature of the character and what she is and who she is. I was like, that was a really fun one.
I was going to ask you which one was your favorite. I think I just got my answer to work on.
It might have been, and it's not to dismiss the others. I think there was something special about being like, oh, this is, granted, they're going to change and evolve. It was like 6 of 6. It was like the last kind of puzzle piece. Yeah. And it was interesting to look back on all the other ones and be like, oh, how they've all informed each other and how they informed this one. Was really neat to kind of slot that last piece in there.
Do you remember when I asked you, what does magic sound like?
Yes. And what specific kind of magic?
Yeah, and then there are so there are even kind of Easter eggs or like lore Easter eggs sprinkled into these theme songs, because I couldn't help myself, and
we planted a lot of seeds. Mm-hmm. So the really interesting thing about the character themes is that they're V1, except for Titus. Talk to Donnie. Donnie's was the hardest one.
I almost brought that up, but maybe
I'm kidding.
We'll tuck that one away for another day.
Yeah. No, there's a lot of Easter eggs. We planted a lot of seeds for things, and part of the fun of writing the characters, those character themes in particular, was imagining what they would be like, fully evolved. In full bloom down the road. Yeah. And it's like, okay, we have that in mind, but that's not where we're at right now. So we're starting with the seeds of that and hints of that, and maybe we'll get there, maybe not for certain ones. No spoilies on that end, but that was a really fun part of the challenge too. To be like, okay, you're not just gonna go completely big and like this is divine magic. We have to hold back a little bit. Build to that.
A lot of restraint. Yeah,
which I think was a huge part of the fun. And like what you asked earlier, why not take like
Difficult
the
time.
easy,
Yeah.
well trodden path? Well, because this is like I don't I don't ever like, and I hope this does not uh, sound conceited or arrogant or anything. I've never liked to take the easy. When you do this type of music for as long enough, you get aware of lots of other music, and you get aware of like
Yeah,
generally
of
what
course.
works for lots of things. Like done a lot of fantasy music by now, and I love doing like fantasy, high fantasy, dark fantasy kind of stuff. Lord of the Rings, Warhammer, lots of different things.
You've done work
And
on one of the Lord of the Ring video games, yes?
yeah, they had a Fantasy Flight did a digital version of their Lord of the Rings card game that it did the music for, which was like I think a great primer and training for working on something like Darkport, because what they were saying, it's Lord of the Rings, it has to feel, that's a different kind of challenge, but I think it helped a lot. It's like it's Lord of the Rings, but it can't be New Line Cinema Lord of the Rings.
Right,
Um,
right.
yeah, which is like such a distinctive, iconic, like influential sound. I mean, those movies in general, but like, and Tolkien in general, but that soundtrack, it's like, oh, Lord of the Rings, that's like influenced all fantasy music since then.
Right.
Yeah, it's absolutely iconic.
Well,
But I,
I mean, really, all fantasy, everything.
yes, on
Music,
every
plot,
level.
archetypes,
Yeah,
hungry. Yeah, it's
yeah,
sure,
yeah.
sure.
And I'm a huge like as you are too, a huge Tolkien
Oh
dork.
yeah,
So
I'm rereading a
um,
series right now. Yeah,
yeah. Did you read the Silmarillion again?
I have never. I'm going to admit this on. I have never read
Oh
Silmarillion.
wow.
So I have. You were not the first person to take me to task for that. So
Mhm.
eventually, I'm sure I will have to. I'll have to get in there. No, I read it for inspiration and to kind of like when I'm getting big for my britches to kind of take take me down or a little down on the dumps. And like, okay, I can
Yeah.
I'm gonna get this, and I'm sure the soundtrack of those, the Magnificent Trilogy is pretty inspiring for you too to
Oh
listen to.
yeah. Mhm.
You hear it on a lot of different levels.
Oh yeah. And I mean, distinctive and the writing style and how it's written for all the things in it are, yeah, crazy influential. It's one of those soundtracks, and that will be around for a really long time. Um,
Yeah.
but as far as taking like trying to take a difficult path, part of like the music creating process for me has always been okay. What are we trying to do, and how like even if it's like we just want something like this is the stand, like this has not happened with you guys at all, but like even if it's like we're looking for something like this, and like we want it to fit into this kind of box, this kind of slot, and it's like okay, I've gotten a lot better at this over time, but to be like trying to understand the medium and the audience or the client you're working for, and going
Mm.
okay, I see what they're going for. How well do I know them? How well do I understand this project? The audience that they're trying to show this music to, how far, and this is not like branching into weird, but it's like how much can I try? How much can I experiment? How much can I get uncomfortable with to try to evolve and find a more unique sound and palette for any given track or project? And like that's always straying from the path, and that's always a creatively vulnerable and uncomfortable place to be in, which you force yourself into the breach over and over and over again. That's all
Yeah.
part of, as you know, that's all part of the act of creating. And it always just never seemed right to be like, I know what they want, and like that's it, and I could just knock that out and get on to the next thing. It's like that's never been my style of making music, or like as now I do for work. But it's each track, each little piece of music is a really it might sound silly, but like is a really precious thing that like deserves your attention. And I try to like appreciate, particularly on projects I really love, like this one, appreciate each one you're doing, and not just be like, all right, I got a big list. Let's knock this off. Let's get to the next one. It's the whole bumping heads of like creativity and efficiency on the other
Sure.
hand. Of course, like push comes to shove, you have to be efficient in a certain way, and like when deadlines get crazy, you have to, you'll get pushed back into well-worn pathways that are comfortable because you have to get things done. And part of what has been a luxury and part of the huge fun of working on Darkport is we've had time to grow this language and all these themes and tracks and take our time with it, and let sit with ideas for a while, because I'll send you something and we'll both sit with it for a while, which is a huge luxury, because
Oh yeah.
usually you just have to turn something in and it's like due then, and then it has to be done and approved. And to be able to sit with something and listen to it and really gather your thoughts, which you've been amazing at doing, and giving notes on stuff, I think has led us to some really cool places.
I agree. I think yeah, no, it's God, I remember I look back at some of the notes and like that just really this is part of what I was trying to work myself over to earlier. Just click back with me that part of the magic of this process, and also like the terrifying part of it, is that for me as a creator, is that this doesn't, I'm the storyteller, I'm also the game master. Those are two overlapping but different things. But this is bigger than me, and it's bigger than even really the group at this point. And part of like, I would joke with you here at Darkport, music leads, because you had said like, music is so often kind of at the rump end of whatever the corporate process is.
Yeah.
And here though, it's like giving up. It's like giving your child up, and then like the child comes back, washed and dressed in a way that you wouldn't necessarily have thought of, but so much better than what you had in mind in the first place. The one that I always cite is the person who did the original drawings, Clark, and he gave the Kithki pointed ears, and I'm like, oh, okay, I guess Kithki have pointed ears now. And and when you like when you figured out, and we kind of went back and forth, like you figured out what hermetic magic sounded like in Terra and what divine magic sounded like, and what it evoked, I was like, that definitely, not only does it resonate with me, Steve, but it informs how I present that on stream, because I have that in my mind. Like I listen to the music before every session. Sometimes when I'm like trying to figure out, okay, what's the next important thing to delve into with these characters, like I'll listen to their theme song. So there's like this incredible like feedback loop that goes on, and at the risk of sounding corporate, the synergy that goes on that just you don't get as a solo. I don't care who you are, you don't get it as a solo creator when you're working in a vacuum. You don't.
Oh yeah, yeah. It's I've said it a bunch of times, but like the collaborative process is such a key and huge part of the fun, and not just the fun, but getting to a place that's greater than, as you said, if each of us were doing this individually, it's like I would not have been able to get there without your notes and bouncing things back and forth off of you. And it's like I listen back and I'm like, oh yeah, that's awesome. Like and I think that goes to tell we're very much on the same wavelength when it comes to these kind of things. I think that's why it works so well.
Yeah, I mean, to wrap this back around, I mean, we've been simpatico through this whole thing. But, it's not, I mean, I appreciate that, like, deeply. It's not just me, though, and I guess this is, I wanted to segue this into the process of making these theme songs, because I think that was really interesting and unique.
Yeah.
And
we built up a template.
We built up a template, but that was still flexible enough to do what we needed to do, where each of them was related but fresh, spokes on a wheel or whatever. I saw you go through that process with 6 other people. Actually, potentially more than that if you count Justin as well, but at least 6 other people. So do you want to briefly describe what that process was when we were making the character themes?
Yeah. So what we did for all the character themes, and like this process, came more into focus the longer we went on, but it was basically like we would you and I would talk to whoever was up next. So Corey was first, so Merrick was
Yep.
first. So we start with that one, and to say, what, not just what do you think, because that's already a difficult question. What do you think your character theme would sound like? It's like, what story do you want to tell? What story do you want to tell with your character in 3 parts? Because like 3-part arcs, nice and tidy, feels dramatically.
Little 3-act structure. Everybody.
Yeah, it's great.
Yeah.
And then like starting there, and that could be very general, like emotions or specific emotions attached to specific things that happened in the character's past that formed who they are. But not only that, like as an arc, evolutionary arc. So like what was Merrick's was, looking back on Merrick's was, connecting this to nature, life at home. And it was then, let's see, there was that one.
Transition to the scouting, I think.
Transition to the scouting.
Because there's a transitional section to it.
Yeah, scouting, exploration, and then it would have been in like combat, ambush combat for that kind of thing. Yeah. Titus's was, I think, was boyish charm kind of thing. It needed to have like a martial feel for the whole thing, but like more boyish charm. And then the second section was really specific, like, oh, I'm, still a very young person, and I'm realizing there's a lot of people relying upon me, and my decisions and commands have consequences, sometimes dire consequences, and living with making mistakes or having people dying on your orders that you care about. And then the third one was vengeance for him. So that's still one of the gnarliest, like the
Donnie just can't. No, it's
character sections.
He can't help himself. What the comment from one of his friends was, "Oh, this is the villain's theme song." I don't know if you knew that or not, Steve.
Interesting. Like, he very much told me he wanted to get across, like, this is the vengeance section where nothing on earth will stop him from, getting his vengeance. Well,
and that, I mean, and again, that's like, there's so much in there, because one of the primordial questions with Titus, yet to be answered, TBD, is does he successfully hold the dream through this era, or does it become a nightmare? Does it become a tyrant? Does it become driven by, instead of justice, it's vengeance? That kind of, that whole thing. And that theme song somehow had to encapsulate like all of those possibilities, which is not easy. Like
we would do that and have them try to think of those things, and it didn't have to be as succinct as 3. We would kind of whittle it down to the 3 that they thought were most important.
And this was like in collaboration with them.
In collaboration. And then like once we would kind of get the structure down, we it's their character themes. They got to sound like what they want them to sound like.
It was really.
If there's any reference music that they like, or if there's any instruments they're like, I would love to have, this is my favorite instrument, I would love to have like this wood flute or this cello or something like that on there.
Always cello. We're still waiting.
Cello.
We're still waiting for Yo-Yo Ma, by the way.
Yeah. Live in studio, Yo-Yo Ma. Yeah.
In studio. That's good.
I'll give him a call later and see what he's available. We would do that, and then we would have the same collaborative back and forth. Like a big part of that is we had a lot of time to build up our rapport and like comfort in giving constructive criticism over things. Like, I'm never going to take offense over anything, and like I've said to you a bunch of times, there's no wasted effort in a process like this. Like, sometimes something has to be created from our first collaborative, 2 things, 3 things, as stepping stones to get to where you want to go. And you couldn't have gotten there without doing those things. It's like you can really easily get in the trap that's like, I have to nail this on the first try, do exactly, like read your mind and get exactly what I want. If I don't get it, I failed. I used to think that all the time. And now I'm like, well, typically if you don't get it on the first try, it just means like this was a necessary step in the collaborative process, and you're like, you couldn't have gotten to the end without it.
You have been so good for my anxiety. I actually quote that back to myself sometimes, that there is no wasted effort. Like sometimes more tongue in cheek here in Darkport, there is no wasted effort, but I'm just like, so riffing on that. So I want to thank you for holding that space and holding that level of that particular kind of integrity, Steve.
Oh yeah, of course. And I mean, like, I really do believe it. Like if it takes one, two, three, if it takes a bunch of versions or revisions or even rewrites, it's like those were part of the process for us to get on the same page and to where we wanted to go.
That was it. I'm sorry. This is squirrel brain.
Yeah.
When you said Titus earlier, so Titus's original theme actually is what became Geramentum's theme.
That's right. Yeah.
Just the second track on the one that we have out on Volume 1.
And we had to really convince Donnie because everybody's so nice. But he was so nice he didn't want to give any criticism about anything. I'm like, dude, it's your character theme. You gotta tell me. We gotta get you what you want.
No, and he still didn't know. He messaged me and he was like, "Hey Angel, what do you think about this?" I'm like, and this was early days with Donnie. He's an incredibly like caring, tender human, So I was like, I think that's Donnie speak for I hate this, And I was like, well, I really enjoy it, but the more important question, Donnie, is what do you think about this theme song? And he's like, well, I'm not, and I'm like, if there's this represents your alter ego, you could be playing this character for freaking years.
Yeah.
So you've got to really love, not just like, oh, this is okay. This needs to be an A+ for you. This needs to be a home run for you.
Yeah.
In terms, but isn't it interesting though how, to earlier point of no wasted work, how like basically almost almost one-to-one. Just very few alterations. We took Titus's version 1 of Titus's theme, and then it was like it was Geramentum, but like Titus had his own story to tell, so it was it was, I don't know, it worked out. It
did work out in a really well. Kind of neat way. I'm really happy with how that ended up working out.
I've never seen that happen before quite that way creatively. It was weird.
Yeah, a big part of that was because to be like, hey, you can tell me if you don't like something. I'm not gonna be.
I was there at all those meetings. You really, you really did. You really put it that.
Which I get because everybody's so nice and so
clearly
sweet,
in that sweetly. So, I guess before I get into the wrap-up questions, one thing you had said earlier that you had told me a long time ago, but I'd forgotten, that you almost went into philosophy and religion. How do you feel like that sort of brain development and exposure with and thinking down along those channels, how do you think that informs the way that you approach music?
Oh, that is a really good question. Yeah, so writing music, doing any creative venture, particularly as a freelancer for a living, is like always an interesting balance, right? If it's something you would already do for fun, but you're now doing for a job and getting paid, you have clients, you have obligations, it's a different kind of beast. And like you're not always going to get part of I think doing that in school and reading lots of philosophy and getting really into Buddhism for really, and getting more into meditation was like learning, there are definitely some, you can get paired up with clients and you're just not a good fit, and it can be a struggle. It could be a huge struggle for the whole time. And that's like nobody's fault in particular. You just didn't end up being that great of a creative fit. You're not on the same wavelength. And of course you get through that and you make things work, but of course you want to work with clients who you're more creatively aligned with. But no matter what it is, you want to try, and used to be awful at this, but it's like, you got to try to find your enjoyment, and even if it's really small things, or find your creativity, even if you're writing in some, for a project that you have to stay in this very tidy box. And you're like, I will just make trouble for this client and their life more stressful if I push too far outside of this. Cause you have to know who you're writing for, what the audience is. And like I was saying before, like how far you could try things. So it's like, okay, I have to kind of stay in here. And that doesn't mean phone it in, just like do the standard thing. It means like find the things you could dig in and have your, fill your cup, your creative cup with. Be it like, oh, I'm just going to like really focus on synth design for this or this really particular technique and really just dig into that. And it may be like so subtle that nobody else would pick up on it, but that's part of like, you're like, okay, I have to do all this music, and maybe I can't just like spread my wings and do whatever I like, or and like flex my musical muscles and be like, here's me at my apex of like production and writing.
Right.
Which is another trap in itself. As you know, you're like, oh, the latest thing I've done always has to be like showcasing every last one of my skills, and it has to be the best thing I've ever done.
All the things.
Huge trap right there. But yeah, learning how to find fun in small things, knowing that like music and doing something like this is so incredibly subjective, and people have different comfort levels with what they're hearing, talking about what they're hearing, and the music that they like. And a big part of the process that I struggled with for a long time, and I feel like I've gotten a lot better with, is getting to know who you're working with, getting to know their comfort zone, and getting to know how to work with people specifically like that. And like if they have strong discomfort about certain types of music, or talking about music in certain ways, or being presented music in certain ways, you got to find out ways to make it more palatable for them. Because it can be when you don't do it all the time, it could be a really, I think you're amazing at it. I know you were very nervous at the beginning talking about music and what you want from somebody creating music for you.
I just felt like who the hell am I to tell this man who's devoted his life to this, like, squat about these things. It was hard.
But you're the exact person to tell me that. It's like, you've heard music all your life. You know things you've heard that you like. You know things you've heard that don't resonate with you. You know your universe you've created better than anybody, obviously. So you're the exact person to tell me those things.
Worked out all right.
Yeah, it did.
Worked out all right.
Yeah, and to wrap that last question up, it's
Sure.
Mostly just about trying to be mindful and not get caught in, and I still do, like, not get caught in like these traps, like imposter syndrome traps, the stuck in a rut trap, like, oh, I have to do this thing and I feel like it's not creatively fulfilling and I have to do a bunch of it. Well, there's always ways, I think, to figure out some way to get fun out of it. Some way to feel like, oh yeah, I feel creatively fulfilled. I feel like I'm not just doing a library track that's been done 10 billion there's 10 billion versions of it with a 0.001% difference out there, because there's so much music out there. Yeah, a lot about mindfulness. Yeah.
Fun for sure. Fun or satisfaction, or both?
Both. Okay. They're distinctly different.
They are different.
They are distinctly different. Fun is more, I would say, in this process, like a momentary motivational thing. It helps you throw yourself in there and back into the breach, which is like why I talk with my composer friends a lot about. It's like, it's the gas, right? It's gear acquisition syndrome.
Yeah,
it's like you're stealing yourself for a big,
your drummer friend who does.
Yeah, and it's like you're stealing yourself for your next big project, and like it'll get to crunch time and things will be stressful, and like that's just how things work. It's nobody's fault in particular. It's just like what happens, and you're like, okay, what's like this dopamine hit I give myself? Like, I'm gonna buy a new synth and be like, I'm gonna use that, and that's gonna like propel me into here. It's a twisted cycle. It's not the best cycle of consumerism there, because it feels so productive. You're buying something for work. It's a dangerous trap.
That's a good one.
But the difference between satisfaction and fun is definitely a distinct one.
Buy a pug instead, Steve.
Yeah, there you go. There's a beagle chow outside this door.
There's a beagle chow who's ready to get daddy again.
Yep.
So my last two questions for you are the first one is, if someone's interested in doing what you do and getting their foot in the door in your field, how exactly would you describe your field? I mean, obviously you're composing music, but I feel like you have a really particular, you've gone down a particular lane
Mhm.
with it, even though it's pretty broad.
Yeah.
How would you describe that? And then where would a person start? Or how would they start? However, it's best to answer that.
Yeah, I would say,
Because you did
and
not have the typical. You did not have the typical start.
I did. Yeah, I would say, um, don't be afraid to be bad at things. I mean, that's in general, but like, don't be afraid to be bad at things and learn, because that's the best way. That's the best way I found to absorb knowledge and technique, is to be like, yeah, I'm not great at this, and like the frustration won't repel me, like from doing these and learning these things. Or I'm listening to like, I remember when I first started, and you're ripping video from DVDs. There you go. Before Blu-rays, and you're ripping video, stripping the audio out, and you're scoring to it, right? And like, there's all these soundtracks you have in your head of these great masters, John Williams, John Powell, all these people, and you're like, well, I can't do that right now, but like it's inspiring. Like that knowledge doesn't frustrate me, it inspires me to just try to get better. Listening back to your music, and you're like, no, it's not as good, as I'm not where I want to be. It's just like finding enjoyment and like in that learning process. And I know I've heard lots of music makers in particular talk about like how formative that whole blundering era of not knowing anything you're doing with software, with writing music, like how formative that is, and how fondly and nostalgically people will look back on those times, even though at that time you're frustrated and trying to learn, like trying to keep the frustration in check and learn things because you want to get the sound out that's in your head. I would say, don't be afraid to learn things and be bad at things. Find what makes you go, oh yeah, that's awesome, or like it really resonates with you, gives you the big time feels, and like lean into that. Like I never in like always take any advice, particularly with creative fields, with a huge grain of salt. But like I never, the advice of just say yes to everything, don't say no, be everything to everyone at all times, and that's how you succeed, never really resonated with me. And it might with other people. Like it might work great for other people, and that's just fine. But like the say yes, fake it till you make it. Be everything to everyone, so all options are available at all times. I was just talking to my wife Kate about this, and that I know I talked to you about this. The other great composer Austin Wintry, who went to the USC program before I did, who's done tons of amazing music.
Yeah.
He talked to our class, and like I'll probably never forget. That was so impactful and genuine. And he was like, "There's no reason to not go out there and do your thing. That is your favorite thing, and use that as like a beacon." And you construct this beacon that shows this is my thing. This is the thing I love doing. It's what I'm good at. Like I'm good at. I'll do this all day, every day, because you never know who that is going to resonate with.
It's so true.
And when it does resonate with somebody, you want to work with those people who are into the same things as you are. Because if you put up a bunch of beacons for things where you're like, I just need to cast a really wide net, I don't really like doing those things, you're probably going to get those projects, and then you'll get more of those projects. So it's like, careful what you put out there into the universe, because
like calls to like, for sure.
Yeah, you'll get more of it. So it's, and the other thing he said is like, since there's so many music makers, like if you're doing something you don't really enjoy and you're not that into, that 100% is somebody else's favorite thing to do, and they're going to be more into it and better at it than you are, and they will enjoy it more getting those jobs.
That's some truth. That is some truth right there.
And like that will stick with me forever. And as far as like breaking into this weird and what it's like working as a freelance composer, particularly now in the land of AI and incoming Skynet,
that's a whole nother conversation there, baby. Yeah,
that's a whole nother thing.
Yeah.
I would say it can be really, it's ruthlessly competitive, like any freelance creative venture. Composing in particular, if you want to do composing for video games, for film, for TV, it's like there's never going to be job listings ever. You do your own searching out yourself. You do cold calls. Perhaps you have somebody representing you that will get you in on these pools, but those are only pools to get into to pitch against other people. So that loops back to doing the thing you really love, because you're going to need to spend a lot of time on it. And it's there's a lot of people. There's a lot of people making music. There's a lot of library music. There's a lot of music houses. So there's myriad of competition everywhere. And it can feel pretty bleak, I think at times you definitely can get into that cycle, because you're a freelancer. If you typically don't have your whole year mapped out in every project, and you're like, this is how I'm going to make money for this year.
Sure.
You typically, at least what happens to me and my friends, is you get 150% absorbed in the project you have. You forget to make social media posts. You forget to do advertising. You're in the act of creating, and you get to crunch time, and then you're done, and you're like, oh shit, what's the next thing? And then you're facing that cosmic fear of the freelancer again, right?
Well, one of the good old yeah. I mean, one of the things that absolutely drives me and keeps me motivated on this project, Steve, is knowing that other incredibly talented people have reposed their faith in me. And it's like, I really, really want to get us to a place where, I sleep on a glorified, glorified piece of cloth on the floor, and I just want my books in my apartment. I'm fine. But like, people got to eat, and I want to get us to a place where we can do this without that kind of existential fear, like, okay, where's the next paycheck coming from? Where's the next meal coming from? All of that stuff. So we'll get there.
Oh, and
it's early days, but we'll get there.
Yeah, I would end that with saying that Darkeport has been it's always energizing and like inspiring to work on Darkeport. And it's like, even if I've been slammed with other work stuff and I haven't had time to do new things, like coming to now every 2 weeks, but like Darkeport music meeting is always like, I'm always like, oh man, I just want to go do Darkeport music, every time. It's never like, oh, this is another thing for me to do. It's always like, oh,
right.
Yeah, this would be great.
Right.
I can't, I have all these ideas. I can't wait to do it.
Well, I'm still just frothing at the mouth for a man. When you did that little quick leitmotif of, if that's the right term, for Titus and Lucretia's themes.
Yeah.
When you listen to them and you hear how bloody well those themes commingle with each other, woof! I can't wait for that. Even though Justin,
that was nice that worked out. That even I was surprised. I was like,
crazy. No, it was crazy.
Right.
It was like they were meant to be entwined together.
That's right. Yeah.
Not the characters. Justin being much more practical than me, and also being the producer, is like, yeah, so let's get some more ambiance, let's get some, if you want new music, Angel, let's get some travel music. It's like,
looking for that bang. Yeah, looking for that bang for buck there.
Bang for buck. I'm like, yeah, okay, you're not wrong. So yeah, I wanted to end with, and people who have seen the other interviews will know that I have a particular hobby horse, and I'm just, and since I'm conducting the interview, I get to have it, damn it, get to ride this hobby horse. So my contention is, and I'm still sharpening this, but my contention is that actual play, role playing, is a new and emergent art form. That's my contention, and I've been gaming since I was knee high to a grasshopper. And really probably shouldn't have been gaming at the group I was. I was a really persistent, annoying younger brother. Okay. Can get you places, people. Yeah, just don't take no for an answer. You can say no, but don't take no for an answer. No. But anyway, and it's different now. I mean, I'm here to tell you, like, it's different now. The same, you're not hiding in your basement. You're not. I mean, there's a cultural cachet to the quote unquote nerd culture and all of it. The Marvel movies were huge. Stranger Things, obviously, critical role in this particular space.
Yeah.
I feel like we're in alignment on that, because some people don't necessarily agree with me on that it's an emergent art form. oftentimes some of the same people who tell me that video games are not art, which is fine. um, what what does this feel? So as our music director, I guess I want to ask you specifically, what does working on Darkport feel like the most to you? And then what are some things that are just truly unique? Like, does it feel, I know it doesn't feel like reality television, or at least I hope it doesn't feel like working on
No, it
reality
does.
television with the little 1-2 second stingers or whatever, et cetera. So, and it's not a video game per se, but you are using some of the same techniques to keep the music fresh, to keep it integrated, that you've developed in video games. So what does it feel like the most? And then is there anything that's truly new here that you've felt or done?
I mean, writing music for something that's being created live in front of everybody's eyes every week, um, you know, is so vastly different than like working on a show or something where it's like, yeah, you may get a new episode every week or two, depending on what kind of thing you're working on. But like that stuff is set. You'll get new cuts, you'll get new edits, but like those things have happened. You're coming in at the tail end and doing those things.
Right.
And this to be like, oh, every week this has happened. I don't know what's going to happen.
I don't know what's going to happen.
Yeah, we don't know. Like, in what way will we be expanding character themes? In what way will we be doing different set piece moments? Like how will character themes evolve? What locations will we get? And it's this fascinating blend of like everything's always fresh, and it's like it's this great blend. It feels like doing video game music for the background stuff, right? Feels like doing it in a different way, as in like maybe the player will spend an hour in the village. If they spend an hour in this village, make sure it doesn't get old or obnoxious. Like,
Right.
is the vibe right? Make sure
Yeah.
it stays fresh and feels good. And it's like another layer to that is like, yeah, Justin gets to control all those things that are happening based on what's happening in real time. And we try to anticipate different things to build into the Y session and the interactive music. First we're like, okay, how much, there's only so many hours in a day. What type of music do we need most of right now? Ideally, we'd have
unlimited resources.
Unlimited.
Yes.
But then Justin would have unlimited buttons and it would be overwhelming. So you have to grapple with that.
Well, Justin would, and God's willing is going to have, will have a small army back there eventually. But although when it happened, yeah.
Yeah, doing that, and it's like it's this blend of that, but also it's like this fantastic thing of like writing. Like, this might sound silly, but like writing music, like when I do those character themes for you all, these main themes or these big set pieces, it's like we have a structure, but it's like I'm not writing the picture. I'm not writing to an area in a video game.
No.
It's like we're just talking about it together as people, and we're getting there together, and we're imagining, and yeah, we'll have artwork to look at for inspiration and stuff, but it's a very cerebral, fun, exploratory process doing all that stuff. So it's like this great hybrid of things, but also so new. Like, I've done music implementation in Wise and dynamic music in video games, and this is a whole different area and level of planning, because it's like it's also all pretty much, you have to be like, all right, we're pretty much always under dialogue, so you need to make sure you sit well. People need to be heard. That's the most important thing. And it's like, how do we fit in set piece moments that are louder? What areas are we going to be in the most? Like, what batch of music will be used the most? So like that needs the most love unless it gets old and annoying to people. And it's like, how many different situations can we plan for and guess that might happen? And can we feasibly implement them for live use? It's like this fascinating, ever-changing puzzle, which I really have enjoyed. Yeah.
The live use piece in Justin's interview, I said I would mention this, and one of the that's really good. That's really good, and I feel not surprisingly that answer is the closest to how I have felt on the storytelling end of it.
And I would say it's definitely an emergent art form, because I've talked to lots of people who I know aren't gamers, aren't big into D&D, and they're like, "Oh yeah, I watch the streaming, or I watch Critical Role, or I watch something," like a lot. Like, wow, I had no, like, because it's, as we talked about before, like we've talked a lot about, not to go on a huge tangent right at the end here, but pacing, and how it's like pacing on like a TV show or a movie can be very high paced and like demanding, because you typically don't have as much time to work with. An actual play, particularly when it's done in there's such a rich lore and world like you have in yours, with great characters and backstory, so much to dig into. It's like reading a book you love and being able to take your time. And there's something, I want to say relaxing, like they're relaxing at times for sure, but like that pace is very pleasing and great, if that makes sense.
It absolutely does, because it's a lot different from a 15-second Instagram video, which is what what this person now is dealing with, how to try to convey things. Yeah. Yes. No. I've been amusing myself.
The evolution is fantastic, because I remember when I first met you a little over a year ago, you were like, "I guess I'll use this computer a little bit."
Man, I still wouldn't have. People think I'm joking when I say, but for Corey's insistence, I still wouldn't have a freaking cell phone. He told me he was tired of not being able to get a hold of me. Landline forever, baby. Yeah, the musical cues. The whole live studio audience thing. Doing live television, which is kind of where I think about it. My dad thinks of it as a radio show, but trying to get the musical cues right on that stuff, and I guess that's another discussion. But I mean that it's really just made me appreciate so much the tremendous amount of talent that it takes to synchronize, everything, and some of the unique challenges that we're still trying to figure out. We're an evolving. We're only 19 episodes in, 20 if you count the episode 0. Outfit. We're still an evolving outfit that you're very much a part of. So we'll onward and upward, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
Figure that stuff out. You got any final thoughts for our faraway friends? Beavis the Bard.
Well, there's got to be some tavern music coming at some point.
Tavern music. Oh, yeah, you're right. I'm so remiss. God, I've been so bad.
No. That one's no. That was for me to do. That's for me.
Well, for you, that's true. But to give you some lyrics, lyrics to sing,
and to get the whole cast to sing is a dream of mine.
Yeah, to get
Randy to sing more.
Well, Randy's the big one. We are working on a particular song right now. It's bubbling up, and that'll be in character. That'll be obvious when that pops. But yeah, I mean, Randy. For those who don't already know, Randy sang his part in his theme song. He used to.
He's got a great voice. Yeah.
He's used to sing on a nationally ranked choir. He just gets embarrassed about it.
I don't know why. He has a beautiful voice. Yeah,
he absolutely does.
Yeah.
Well, Mr. Steve Gernes, art director, music composer, freelance extraordinaire, and apparently alter ego of the immortal bard. Thank you. Thank you. So who's an integral part in defending the world from the Red Emperor's nefarious takeover. The Last Quest of Jason Tenderheart. All that has been streamed. All that lore has already been streamed. Thank you so much for your time. I usually thank the audience for their time, and of course I'm delighted that you've been with us through this whole interview. I hope it was of value to you.
Oh, this was so much fun.
Thank you for your time and your insight, your continued grace, and just excellence. Not only technical excellence, but also your excellence as a human being. You've really enriched this experience for me, and we love you, and whenever you can make it, whenever Whenever you can make it down to the burning sands of Austin, Texas.
Down to King's Landing. Yeah.
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 I don't know, more like Dorn on a bad day.
Hey, there you go.
But
Yeah.
please do at some point. I will make it up there. I may tap out this summer. I've never done that before in my life, but I don't know. Either I'm getting softer or it's getting hotter or both. It's kind of meet in the middle. So I will speak with you soon. And would you be available for our faraway friends, for anyone who was curious and wanted to follow up with you and to start a conversation with you or dialogue or whatever, if they had questions about the field or about your process or any
Oh, definitely.
anything like that? How can they best contact you?
I'm on the Discords in the background most all day for work stuffs.
Okay.
So if they wanted to get on the Darkeport Discord or message me or anything, that would probably be the easiest way to do that. Probably more convenient than email. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And you have in the link to in the description, we'll put the link to what's the best place to link people to for music related stuff for you?
It could be the music thread on there or just the general one.
Okay.
Yeah, either one of those.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Well, take care of yourself. And
yeah, you too. Thanks for having me on this and for letting me be a part of the amazing universe that is Darkeport. It's been a pleasure all the way through.
It warms. It really warms me that it started off that strong for you. I'm glad that I didn't come off as a raving lunatic.
No way.
So, friends, thank you so much for being with us. And as you take your journey out there, stay safe and stay curious. See you next time.
All right.